How are you? Let's start with information about what's happening in the world. Hey, well, we have to start with this volcano, the Kilauea volcano, which keeps surprising us. It keeps producing these lava fountains. According to the images shown by the United States Geological Survey, the point here is that Hawaii's most active volcano is now experiencing its 42nd eruptive episode. According to the reports, these lava fountains reached 250 meters. Just imagine those columns. Imagine the columns of liquid rock lava rising to those heights. The truth is, the force there must be truly impressive. According to reports, besides this, there were columns of ash. According to reports, the ash columns reached up to 35,000 feet in altitude. Let's see if we have one of the images here. This time, let's make it bigger. There it is. It's an impressive size, especially in terms of ash too. Well, let's get to the details. How have you all been? Greetings to Nicole and Franco, to Blanca, to Barcelo, to Edil, and to the whole community. Eric as well, Eric Marino, how have you been? Let's get into the details of what is known about this movement, about this volcanic activity, and let's also look at the international information. Obviously not. The scientists have released a report. In the report, they state that the volcanic summit is once again showing a kind of deflation, so to speak, of 21 microradians. This would be a phenomenon of massive magma release. The images, which were reportedly released by the United States Geological Survey itself, not only show the lava columns, but you can also see the rivers of lava flowing down the slope. La Cadiz, the Alcazar River, La Alcazar, and then in the... Obviously, there is a risk if you get close, but other than that, they say there is no risk. As for whether the nearby population will have any problems or anything like that, no, that's ruled out. At least that's what people are saying. Kilauea is a volcano that has been continuously active since 1983, which is when the lava fountains began. And it has had periods of years almost on pause, and then suddenly it comes back, like in 2025 last year and 2026 this year. And it has had spectacular lava fountain activity. This volcano is part of a group of volcanoes in Hawaii. There are 6 that are active. Among them, the largest is Mauna Loa, considered the biggest volcano on the planet, although part of it is under the sea. The authorities maintain constant monitoring 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for possible changes in the direction of gases. Volcanic seismic activity that could also affect flights to the airports in the area. The phenomenon puts Hawaii in the global spotlight when it comes to volcanoes. It's almost always in the news. There's almost always this constant activity showing that yes, nature is there, active and ongoing. Not only active, but it can also have or generate some surprises, obviously, as well. Another thing that draws attention today is the seismic topic. What's happening today in different regions of the planet? Among them, this very curious earthquake, an earthquake that would have occurred in this area. Let's see if we can see it here. There is this earthquake we're looking at. Let's zoom in. It's an earthquake that's not in the Pacific, and that's already curious in itself. An earthquake that was initially reported as magnitude 6, although it has now been downgraded to 5.7. Yes, 5.7. It's an earthquake that also occurred between Africa and Brazil, or between Africa and Latin America, right? Here is São Paulo, and here on this side is Angola, right? And this is where this earthquake happened, which, well, would have been quite intense, but it didn't trigger any tsunami alert. At least so far, there hasn't been any variation in the buoys that National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration uses to detect drastic changes in wave height, not in the sea itself. So, well, that's the earthquake, at least for now, the most important one we've had today. So with that, well, we start today with that important activity. Let's move on to other matters. Let's go to other interesting topics as well about what's happening in the world. Thanks to the community that's joining in. Help us out by liking and sharing, right? For now, we're waiting for more people to join. In the meantime, look, here's the image that was shared today on social media. This is from Twitter. Let's see if we can get a little closer to what the Iranians are showing. Let's get into the details of what's happening with this topic. In a few moments, we'll talk about the reactions to these moves that Iran is making. But first of all, let me tell you that the Iranians are showing strength again, right? At least that's what they're trying to show with these military exercises. By the way, are they using real weapons? I mean, what I mean is that sometimes they fire, but they're firing blanks. And this time, they're actually carrying out attacks. And besides, do you know where they're doing it? What you're seeing here is happening in the Strait of Hormuz, which the United States had already told them not to do because of the risks involved. Besides, because the United States has military forces here, military forces there, and the Strait of Hormuz is highly monitored. Not so much by Iranians, but by the people of Oman, the Emirates, the United States, and the military. But, well, they didn't want to take this suggestion into account, so to speak, that the Americans had made. And, well, it's interesting. Look, the IRGC Navy, the Revolutionary Guard, had launched a military exercise in the Strait. The exercise is being carried out under the direct supervision of Major General Mohammed Pakpour, Commander-in-Chief of the Revolutionary Guard. The exercise obviously coincides with the arrival of the Iranian minister Abbas Araghchi in Geneva. He will be in Geneva, not in Geneva, over there in Switzerland, and there he will meet with several world leaders. Well, right now, later, we are going to talk about what happened with the meeting with Rafael Grossi. Rafael Grossi is the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is this United Nations organization in charge of nuclear risks. They already had a meeting. There's even a photo of Araghchi with Rafael Grossi, who's from Argentina, right? And he already met right now in Geneva. At least that's the information I have. We'll check in a moment. If it's not an archive image, we'll review it right now. But the report of this meeting is already out, and what will be discussed in that meeting, or what is being discussed in that meeting. We'll check right now. The initial reports have already started coming out. We'll see what they say in a moment. Because I didn't get a chance to check it before the report, I just know that operation is already there. I managed to take a quick look over it, but we'll check it together right now. What you can sense in Iran is that they're nervous, that what they're always trying to do is show this, to show strength. Let's see if we can put it here. There's that post they made, not the one where they show the bunkers, but still, these are archive images, right? I mean, honestly, at this point, I don't really know if the exercise, as they say, is actually being carried out. Honestly, I doubt it, really, but well, that's what they're saying. That's part of what I know, but let's move on to other matters about what's happening in the Middle East. We're going to that meeting right now, but before that, I'd like us to look at what's happening in Israel. There's a final ultimatum. Basically, it's the most decisive ultimatum maybe in the history of, well, Gaza. Let's get to that. Notice that the time has already run out, right? The ultimatum. An ending where either they disarm or never, or a final move is made, a move of war. We are not seeing this final phase. We have already seen that things have calmed down in Gaza relatively, but what we are seeing now is perhaps the last part of the conflict. What did the Israelis say today? What have they been commenting on? Well, let's get into the details, right? Israel has already set a deadline, which is 60 days. In 60 days, the final decision will be made. Let's say no. There is already a time frame. Talking about the possible end, about a final way out, in which the hostages were going to be released. It was done. Even the bodies of the remains of the hostages were also, well, already handed over or recovered. But at this moment, a deadline has been set in which either they disarm or they disarm. There is no other option. The Israeli government set a deadline that was surprising. Because of the date, which is usually very quick, like you have 3 days, you have a week, right? This time they went for 2 months, 60 days. In fact, it seemed very strange to me. We had to look for information in different media and in different Israeli sources, even to see if this was really the case. We found it curious. I'm sure they'll report so that this terrorist group completely disarms, but it's not going to be easy. There are groups and subgroups. Not all terrorist groups like Hamas follow the same line. They're very divided, and there are even clashes between other nearby groups, among other groups, some of which are also their own enemies. In Gaza, it's a problem, according to what they indicate. Joshi Fuchs, cabinet secretary and senior advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu, during his speech at the conference in Jerusalem, pointed out that this period was proposed by the Trump administration. And that's the reason why we understand that they wouldn't have said 2 months, not even as a joke. I mean, these 2 months were proposed by Trump and they took them into account, and now they're talking about them, right? During this period, he must never hand over all his weapons, including light weapons like the Automat Kalashnikova 47, according to the statement by Fuchs. The official warned that the group is not complying. If they do not comply with the Israeli Defense Forces order, they will resume military operations. That's what they say. If this is not fulfilled, in 2 months, large-scale operations will return to Gaza. In other words, we will see tanks and planes entering again. In other words, everything we've already seen in previous months. So this is not just any period, it's 2 months, there's time. We'll see if the Indonesian soldiers will be arriving in that country or in that area. No, because it's not a country yet or anything, but we'll see if they're heading to Gaza, right? If the Indonesians also try to take control and reach an agreement. The peace board is scheduled for this coming Thursday of this same week, although they acknowledge that there is no definite date for the start of this board. They also state in Times of Israel that the government's expectation is that before the possible election in Israel, tentatively scheduled for June, Hamas should not have handed over the weapons. Otherwise, the FBI would once again be involved in a broad military offensive phase. Not according to at least what they warn, right? And there are several details that catch my attention in what has been said on Datamos Israel and in other Israeli media. No, in that sense, no. Another thing that catches my attention is that there are internal political problems. In fact, I already knew that with this Netanyahu government. And now? The Minister of Justice refuses to say that he will obey the court order that convenes the Judicial Selection Committee. So is there an internal conflict between Netanyahu and the judicial authority? The Ministry of Defense itself is also involved in some controversies within Israel. So there are problems, there are conflicts. The senator will be there soon, if he's not already there these days. I don't know if it's today or sometime around now. This Lindsey Graham is not going to be visiting Israel. And well, supposedly the topic is going to be Iran, right? That's the idea, isn't it? And that's it. Lindsey Graham has said on several occasions that what's coming for Iran is no longer a matter of months, but that in the next few weeks, the decision will be made. I mean, before summer, at least that's how I understand it, before summer, the situation would already be decided either in a war or in a business deal. And who knows what else, right? I mean, but that's where things are headed, right? That will also be interesting for that whole region. Let's move on to other matters also important about what's happening in the world. Look, on other topics, let's talk about Rafael Grossi, right? But what catches my attention is what's been happening with North Korea, where we see Kim Jong-un already in a phase, I mean, maybe a bit strange, something different. Let's go to the map towards North Korea. Kim Jong-un, well, once again shows that he still has surprises to give, this time North Korea. And the same regime, let's say, has been dedicated to generating a kind of communication, at least trying to make it a different kind of communication. But this time, there's something that gets out of their control. It's rare for this to happen. It's rare for something like this to occur. But a defector, someone who was inside North Korea itself, simply managed to escape. Someone who is close to the regime, someone who has been involved in hacking operations, close to global hacking operations, and he has revealed How has North Korea managed to fund this nuclear operation, this nuclear weapons program that it has had for so many years? How has North Korea managed to fund something like this? With a constant crisis, with few resources, with few relationships in the world, well, a defector from Kim Jong-un's regime has infiltrated. He says, they have seen how North Korea infiltrates different Western companies with the idea of constantly stealing. Hacking and stealing is basically the method. The Wall Street Journal presents a fairly comprehensive article in which it exposes a network through which Kim Jong-un is allegedly funding the nuclear program. With hackers infiltrated in the largest companies around the world, including some of the SP 500, that is, the 500 largest companies in the world, North Korea has been operating there, and thanks to those thefts that have been taking place, they have been able to operate for some time now, so that they can carry out attacks, right? The hackers have an entire building where they operate in 40 countries. They're operating in 40 countries, supposedly, even in Mexico, by the way, right? Human rights activists argue that few information technology workers can afford a missile, emphasizing that there is a strategic impact in what they do, that these information technology workers. So these people, these hackers, have a good life if they manage to do their job, so to speak, right? The lives of these specialists are very controlled. These hackers work 16 hours. It's like an office job. They arrive at a certain time and leave after 16 hours. After being there, they are monitored digitally all the time. They must attend regular ideological re-education sessions. Because just imagine, I mean, the hackers are watching the world. They're seeing how the world is, right? I mean, they're connected to the internet and with a really high-speed connection, right? So they're exposing themselves to what's really happening in the world, something that's hidden from most people, but they have the information, so they're constantly being watched like that completely. They give them a good life, so to speak, but they're totally monitored. Any suspicion they raise, out. 16 hours of work, they're re-educating them, brainwashing them constantly, right? The lives of these specialists are strictly controlled, and after detecting or determining that one of them is suspicious, they kick them out. And they can even end up punishing them in extreme ways. The case shows a kind of hybrid war that has been going on for many years. Identity theft, covert financing. Come on, all the international sanctions aren't enough to stop this kind of operation, right? Pyongyang's political power isn't based on weapons, at least not right now, but rather on digital means. By attacking and stealing cryptocurrencies and carrying out a bunch of scams, right? Wouldn't they basically be the ones who have funded the North Korean nuclear program? North Korea based it, at least according to this defector, in the Wall Street Journal. That's how they managed to get billions of dollars and were able to create the nuclear weapons they have now. Honestly, it's like something out of a movie, isn't it? There are several weather alerts right now. Let's get into the details of what's happening with this issue. Let's go to the most serious part, which isn't in the United States right now. This is happening inside Russia. First, well, let's look at this image. This is one of the images that has been shared. The alert that's been issued in Moscow is due to a heavy snowfall that has already put them on yellow alert. The authorities in Moscow declared this type of alert today because of the heavy snowfall that will be starting today. In the coming days, alerts are also forecast for other places. For example, today this was reported in Switzerland. Let's look at this region of the world. It was also reported that it happened there, and in fact, it is happening. Right now, as you can see, there is a significant snowfall between what is Austria and what is Switzerland itself. Here we can see it. There have been tremendous snowfalls. At least 5 people have already been injured by a train derailment due to a snow avalanche in that country. So it is expected that in the coming days, even though winter is already ending, let's say they're already in the last phase, well, February and March can bring some surprises. According to reports, 5 people were injured in a derailment on Monday in the Swiss canton of Southwestern Valleys. Due to an avalanche of snow that blocked the tracks shortly after leaving a tunnel, according to local police. The train is a Regio Express from the regional company DLS, which was carrying 29 people and was traveling between the towns of Koppenstein and Hosten. Well, that's what is being reported, but in the United States, what is expected? Let's quickly go into detail about what's happening in this region of the world. Look, the snowfalls are already starting. The forecast is that today, Monday, and tomorrow, Tuesday, there will be snowfalls, and they will also create critical fire conditions. They are also going to start talking about the potential wildfires. For tomorrow, for example, February 17th, it is necessary to take precautions for a winter storm warning. And also under controversial conditions, both what has been reported and what is expected. Also for Mexico and what is expected for the South of America, where there is also an interesting heat wave. So, let's get into the details. How have you been? Greetings, Diego. How are you? Greetings to Mexico City. Very good. Greetings also to Wendy in New York. Thank you very much. How have you been, Adriana? Later, we'll talk about the 13 Atlas, about how things are going there. There are also some interesting details. George Colosier, how are you? How have you been? Greetings to Romania. Very good, George. Look at what's happening. The United States National Weather Service warns of a scenario in some extreme areas. Meanwhile, in the west, they are facing intense snowfall and winds that will reach hurricane levels. In the south, they remain under critical conditions due to possible fires. According to reports, there are 2 frontal systems coming from the Pacific that will mainly impact California, still extending until around there. Snowfalls will continue through the middle of the week, and one of them could even last for several more days. Oregon and Washington will also be seeing it. Here we can see how this is spreading all over the west, including Mexico. In Baja California, we can see it as well. Over there, not towards Tijuana, they're heading towards Ensenada, not that whole area. According to reports, 2 frontal systems coming from the Pacific will mainly impact that area in the west. Intense gusts are expected that will drastically reduce visibility, especially in mountainous areas. This increases the risk of incidents on high elevation roads. In contrast, toward the central and southern parts, this whole area is starting to experience more favorable weather. Areas that are prone to landslides, fires, consciously. So let's go ahead and put up the fire alert or fire danger map. And let's take a look right away at Will. Antarctic, the southern part, let's say, of North America, well, it has the necessary potential signals for spasmodic lithium drop. New Mexico, Texas, Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming, South Dakota, but also towards Coahuila, Nuevo León, Baja California Sur, Sonora, Sinaloa, Durango, Zacatecas. Come on, we need to pay attention to the alerts issued by CONAFOR, the National Commission for Deforestation, since they have always been giving their Let's hope they keep up that activity on their social media, since they're always posting updates about how the fires are going or where there are possible fire alerts. That's the information they're always posting there. For friends who live near risk areas, you can follow Conofor's updates. We, for our part, are always keeping you updated on how things are going, at least here. In Mexico, there's Conofor. In the United States, it's usually the United States Geological Survey or National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration themselves who issue alerts about this situation. In those regions we're monitoring, sustained winds of between 25 and 40 miles per hour are expected. That would be roughly between 50 and 80 kilometers per hour approximately. In some areas, it will reach 100 kilometers per hour or about 60 miles per hour. The relative humidity will drop to between 10 and 20%, creating an environment suitable for rapid progression. In southern Nuevo Mexico and western Texas, the fire warning will remain in effect until Wednesday, with minimum humidity close to 12%. What we're seeing here, let's keep watching. Look how it increases. See how it increased just from yesterday to today, and this is toward Tuesday, Wednesday. See how it extends into Texas, into Arkansas, this whole area. Thursday, and then conditions start to improve in Texas little by little. By the weekend, humidity starts to come in and the whole situation in Texas gets better. But for now, there are chances of fire risk, right? And next week, I would say I got ahead of myself and they go up again. Well, that's how it's going to be, right? This is the risk of fire spread. What we're seeing here is the fire spread filter towards Venezuela. There's also a certain risk over in Argentina, especially in the area with the highest risk. Right now, all of America. This risk, when it's purple, is called extreme level risk, which is the highest risk. It means all the conditions are present: heat, low humidity, and wind. No, normally it's those three that come together, and that's when you get the highest probability of risk. So we also need to be careful in this part of the world, right? Pay attention to what's recommended. At least that's what they recommend over there in the United States, right? That's what's being reported. Now, about the new party, how far will it go? Even in some northern areas, there's already a risk, the whole central part, right? Starting today and tomorrow, this whole situation is going to happen. But anyway, what they're asking is to avoid unnecessary trips to mountainous areas in the west, meaning don't go camping in those areas during these dates. Don't do any open burning, obviously not, especially when the area is under alert. Stay alert for official updates, prepare your emergency kit in case of possible outbreaks, power outages, or road closures. That's also something that commonly happens. Let's move on to other matters. Hey, well, look, there it is. This is the image that has been shared in various Israeli media outlets about the meeting between Rafael Grossi and Abbas Aragashi. This is happening in Switzerland, over there in the snow. That's where this meeting is taking place, in Geneva. And well, let's get into the details of what is known about this meeting, which is obviously key for the future of the world's nuclear security. First of all, they are meeting with the United Nations' nuclear chief, Rafael Grossi, and the same Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abbas Aragashi. The meeting is ongoing. At the same time, these risky situations are happening, increasing the risk of a conflict between the United States and Iran. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abbas Aragashi, met in Geneva with Rafael Grossi, director of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The meeting took place just before a round of indirect talks between Iran and Washington about the nuclear program. Iran suspended full cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency after the 12-day war collaboration with them ended, and from that point on, the world has been in the dark. What is Iran really doing with its nuclear program? What is Iran doing with the 440 kilos of highly enriched uranium at 60%? With this amount, at least 10 atomic bombs could be built if they decide to militarize. I mean, it's not just anything, right? The International Atomic Energy Agency demanded an explanation about the whereabouts of the 440 kilos of uranium material that could have been used to make these weapons, Aragashi reported. And he comes with real ideas for a possible fair agreement, but he made it clear that there will be no submission under threats. Was he clear again about what happened with it, with the uranium? No, he wasn't clear. Obviously, as always, it's done by the same regime of the Ayatollahs. But the attack maneuvers and the naval exercise maneuvers were indeed mentioned right in the Strait of Hormuz. According to reports, Donald Trump is said to have told Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he would support an Israeli attack on Iranian missile facilities if the talks fail. Iran, however, simply did not want to give details. Now, the Iranian Deputy Minister Mahid Tajid Rabanchi stated that the ball is in the United States court to reach an agreement. They say that if they prove to be sincere, that's not the comment that stands out. It's this one. It's good. It's the one about constant management. I don't know what you think, but I believe, at least for me, that it's just a waste of time. No, it's not. It's not like maybe I'm imagining things, right? And you could tell me, hey, you're not imagining things. If they're going to reach an agreement, well, that's great. Wouldn't it be awesome if they reached an agreement? But this one isn't. That they say they've reached an agreement, because sometimes they say we've already reached an agreement just so that they actually reach an agreement. The International Atomic Energy Agency would have to go into Iran and make sure they're not making nuclear weapons. That would be a really important agreement. Now, I don't know if that's the most convenient thing right now either. The regime clearly has a weakness. Will most Iranians be left with this? That would be the big question. Let's move on to other important matters. There's a pretty interesting issue here between Mexico, Canada, and the United States. Let's get into the details. Notice that Canada is trying to get around Trump and ally itself more with Mexico. Canadian business people and the Canadian minister, business people from Canada and several Canadian ministers are visiting Mexico to expand their businesses. This is in light of the review of the Mexico-United States-Canada agreement. Canada's trade strategy is taking a turn that is also key for Mexico. The trade strategy could also help us diversify, not just diversify businesses. No, not just depend on one country, but on more than three. I mean, with an amount of 370. More than 370 Canadian delegates, including business people, ministers, and other leaders, are visiting Mexico this very week on different dates. What Canada is looking for is to diversify broadly in the face of the uncertainty generated by Donald Trump and his threats to pull the United States out of North American Free Trade Agreement. The meeting will take place in different cities. Right here in Monterrey, there will be several meetings. In Guadalajara, there will be other meetings. And in Mexico City, there will also be meetings. I don't know, I understood that there would also be meetings in Querétaro, but apparently that's not confirmed. But the point is that there will surely be another city. But I'm just mentioning the ones I know at least. Monterrey, Guadalajara, Mexico City. Let's see if Querétaro and other cities get confirmed, but the point is that they'll be watching in different cities. I think of Monterrey and Guadalajara for their industrial side, and Mexico City mainly because it's the capital, right? More than 200 Mexican companies will also be there. Obviously, it's not expected that the Canadian delegation will have direct meetings with all those Mexican companies. Mexico is the third most important trading partner. Canada is not just the United States. For Canada, in terms of the importance of partners, it's the United States, China, and then Mexico is at that level. For the United States, Mexico is in first place, then China, and then Canada. So Mexico is not going to risk breaking with the United States either because it's their main partner. And for the United States, we are also their main partner. But it would be good to do business with Canada, regardless, like the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement says. We make sure that you and us are going to do business, so to speak, right? The numbers are becoming clearer and clearer. Bilateral trade reached $56 billion in 2024, a 12-fold increase from what it was in the 90s. Back then with North American Free Trade Agreement, the growth has been exponential. United States Donald Trump, in his first term, gave a twist to the free trade agreement and called it United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, and many things changed. And Donald Trump even said that's the most important agreement that has ever existed in the history of humanity. I mean, something really remarkable, you don't even know how it is, and now he says it's useless, right? So, well, in light of that, there could be some change in that matter. Not that it will be cancelled, but maybe a change. Quick Mill, a manufacturer of industrial machinery in Ontario, already gets 10% of its sales in Mexico. And they want to expand right here among Canadian entrepreneurs, like different brands, not to mention each one, but different brands. They are seeing that there are good sales and good business exchanges happening. Canadian entrepreneurs are looking to balance their global client portfolio. Meanwhile, we see that Brazil and Mexico are growing a lot in terms of international business. They are achieving good sales, and the United States made a decision. I'm telling you, sometimes Trump makes very strange decisions that have a big impact on their economy. For example, Donald Trump already said not to sell soybeans to the Chinese, not to sell soybeans. And what happens to those who produce soybeans in the United States? Why? What's wrong with you that you don't sell soybeans, that they're consumed here, produced here, and sold elsewhere? Well, China said, fine, then we'll go to Brazil. And they went to Brazil, and Brazil was happy and sold them some. So Brazil took off, and soybean production took off for the Brazilians. But just like that example, there are several more where the United States is automatically putting up obstacles for them. China puts up blockades against the United States. Because of the blockades the United States puts on China, and the internal economy suffers. So that's an issue where now, interestingly, a country that calls itself communist is asking the United States to have a free market. And the free market country, which is supposed to be the United States because it's a capitalist country, well, says no. I'm more nationalist and I cover up and don't let my businesses prosper abroad, nor do I buy from abroad either. Or as little as possible, apparently. This is crazy, but let's move on to other important matters, important ones. Something strange happened with X, not with Twitter, not before Twitter, now X. Well, there was an outage for hours. I don't know if it happened to you. We tried to log in. In the morning, it wouldn't let us in. So it became news that X was down, that it had crashed. On a global level, according to what people are saying, let's look at the details of what is known about this outage. This outage draws attention, especially at a time when there's a clash between Vladimir Putin and Elon Musk. Because for several weeks now, Starlink, owned by Elon Musk, has blocked Russian soldiers from using its internet, and because of that, they haven't been able to operate. They've even had to retreat in key places like Zaporizhzhia. The Russians have had to fall back because they can't hold the front without good internet. In response to that, well, everyone said, well, surely there will be some strange situations happening in the companies of both sides, and this is the first one I see clearly. Not such a drastic drop from the networks, right? The X platform suffered a massive outage that affected feeds, searches, and notifications in several countries. So far, there is no official explanation. The outage was recorded today, February 16, 2026, causing massive failures in its operation. Both on the mobile app and the web version, millions of users couldn't load the home content. The message "something went wrong" appeared. There was an endless loading loop, loading, and it never loaded. Reports came in from Spain, all over the United States and Latin America in general. Outage. The outage detection platform registered a massive spike in complaints within minutes. Afterwards, after an hour and a half, the internet still wasn't back. Until almost 2 hours later, it finally returned. At least that's how we saw it too. The official account of Exniel Hermoso offered explanations for this situation. It's still down. Well, if it says it's down, I still see it. I can see it. Can anyone here see it? It lets me log in. Ah, look, now I can't see it anymore. I'm not seeing it anymore, but let's see if I can put it up. Whoever was looking at the page with Ford, Twitter doesn't let me see it anymore. Look, it's done. They're there. Let's see. They're fine. Try again. It's still down there. It's loading, trying to load nothing. I tried to go somewhere else. And it's ready. Nothing. No, well, yes, I have crashed. It came back for a little while, huh? Yes, it came back for a little while, but I have crashed. Here's what Astrid told us. Thanks a lot, Pablo. How have you been? Best regards. We'll talk about that in a moment. There it is. It's back. It's back. Twitter is back. Let me check with Ford just for fun. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, it seems like it's having issues. There it is. It's with Ford. It won't let me see. Let's keep loading it and see if it works. It almost wants to work, huh? How have you been? Greetings, Adriana Lev. Thank you. And greetings, Pablo. We'll discuss that soon. Karim, how have you been? Thank you very much to the whole huge community. I'm not saying no, huh? It didn't load. It didn't load. It's not loading. This topic, well. The outage obviously affected real-time posting, news coverage, and business accounts. Come on, the traffic is down. Not down yet. Let's check the down detector. I imagine they must still have it there. We're on time. Yes, that's the biggest outage right now. It's X. There it is. X. The biggest outage had a first drop, which is the one we mentioned to you, which is this one, and now it has a second drop, so there are two different ones. I'm just saying because it sounds a bit strange there. Well, it's just that it was a big outage and then there's another outage from X. So, well, that's part of what's happening. Let's move on to other important matters as well. In France, it could be the most important turn in the Emson case and could bring new information that would affect other individuals, even in the United States. The Paris prosecutor's office is creating a special team to analyze Jeffrey Emson's files and reopen the case of former agent Jean-Luc Brunel. The Paris prosecutor's office announced the creation of a special team of magistrates to thoroughly analyze all documents related to this individual. The main objective is to determine whether French citizens may have been involved in crimes linked to this American financier's network. This move comes after the Department of Justice released new files, and apparently other French individuals might be involved as well. As part of the initiative, the case of a former executive of the modeling agency, Jean-Luc Brunel, who was found dead in prison in 2022, is being reopened. While he was facing charges similar to those of Emson, charges similar to his, and he also ended up dead, also in prison. The previous investigation determined that Brunel was a close friend of Emson and that he allegedly offered modeling jobs to vulnerable young women, some of whom reported abuse. 10 women filed accusations against Brunel, describing alleged terrible incidents. It was considered that Brunel, according to them, crucial in the justice system. They said otherwise, they announced. Lovingly, rational immigration drove it. La Bagara, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. In this case, it is presented that some will open it publicly while others will do it more privately. But what stands out is France, because they are already very involved. They have many internal cases, even among politicians, even within the ruling party. So that part could also be interesting. Let's see what comes out of it. But several elites are involved at the same time. Here there are Democrats, Republicans, scientists, business people, little by little, a bit of everything. So this whole situation is going to be interesting. Let's move on to other matters. But, well, the fact that Einstein lost his life in 2019 in a prison, by the way, new videos have come out, new ones about what happened in the prison, for example, later on. Yes. In fact, even on the same day, I don't know if you've seen them around, videos that hadn't been published before, but they were there. Imagine that someone came up with the idea because there were links that were supposed to be videos. But in the end, the file extension was PDF and they thought it was strange, so they changed the PDF to .mob to see what would happen. And like magic, there they were. The videos were online on the Department of Justice website, but they used .pdf as the extension to make it look like it was just a mistake. Right there, but they were there. I mean, the videos were there and they were visible. And in fact, they are still visible. Can you see them? So, the image? There's an elevator and it's like a second floor going down. You can see it. And that part of the second floor. Someone put up a kind of board, one of those with wheels, and they placed it in front of the camera. Exactly where people walk, on the second floor, which goes directly to this jail. The same day he lost his life, someone basically went and covered that place. And, well, I don't know, right? And besides that, does the video have missing hours? I mean, besides the whiteboard, they cut hours from it. That's really strange. The whole case was handled really badly. Look at what's happening. Two high-ranking European commanders are sending a very interesting message about what's coming for Ukraine and Russia. How is the state? Verderi? That's a good point, huh? I mean, honestly, it does work for certain data, for some immediate things. Twitter is fine, but besides that, there's a lot of toxicity in the X environment. A lot of bots too, huh? Many bots and fake things, but we'll discuss that soon. How are you, Verderi? He says hi. So with this, high-ranking military officials from Germany and the United Kingdom are asking the public to accept cuts and more taxes. In order to stop the Russian advance, Europe has just sent a message that changes the strategic tone of the continent. The military chiefs, at least from these two key powers, warned that the moment requires tough decisions and public sacrifices to avoid a direct confrontation. Moscow. So basically, they say, let's invest now to stop the Russian bear, so to speak, because if we don't, we'll have to stop the Russian bear ourselves. Every citizen of Europe, no, not directly, or let them do the job. Ukraine through strong economic aid. No, at least according to what the top military officials of these two countries say. They publicly asked for support to drastically increase defense spending. General Castor Brower and Air Marshal Sir Richard Clinton signed a joint article encouraging action due to the growing risk from Russia. According to the commanders, Russia's rearmament and its willingness to use force in Europe, as is happening in Ukraine, show that the threat is not theoretical. They warn that the call for, let's say, peace after this move by Trump would only make him more sad. Russia to increase its weapons and, well, continue attacking Ukraine. And then, well, maybe the goal is 5% of the gross domestic product for defense. NATO leaders would commit, they say, to reaching 5% before 2035. The thing is, those are budgets for years from now, long after what is urgently needed right now for the Ukrainians. Now Berlin is relocating its troops to the east, as a direct sign of preparation for possible tension scenarios. The same movements of two large ships, one of them an aircraft carrier, that the United Kingdom itself sent to the Arctic. The movement they are now making permanent toward the Arctic, also by NATO, a movement that is now ongoing in the Arctic. There aren't many soldiers, but they're going to stay there, installed permanently, supposedly to monitor the entire Arctic. It's complicated, but they'll be doing it from now on, right? And the thing is, they've done surveys, not surveys on Yugo, but political surveys. And they show that only 25% of the British, and about the same for the Germans, only a small percentage, let's say, support this tax increase. The commanders insist that rearmament is not aimed at war, but rather the opposite, to prevent it through deterrence. Europe, he says, does not want to depend exclusively on the United States, and is entering a different phase, a strategic phase, basically a military one. No, that's the reality we're seeing right now. By the way, in the meantime, there's a very curious movement. This Marco Rubio, I don't know if you saw the image, but here we show it to you. Marco Rubio is touring with Viktor Orban over there in Hungary. Hungary is having trouble. The president of Hungary is having trouble because he is a very NATO-oriented president. The country, but it is very pro-Russian and the economy has gotten terribly worse, right? I mean, compared to Poland, which has been growing and growing, Hungary hasn't done things right, whatever the reason. And now the United States, because they get along with Trump, is trying to support this Viktor Orban. Even though the polls show that the population is going to vote for change, elections are coming and people want a change. We'll see if this turns out in the upcoming elections. But Washington promises financial aid to Hungary. If it does so, well, it promises it exactly before the electoral race. What it could be aiming for is to gain support from the population. For Viktor Orban, this would be a political signal with high international impact. The United States reaffirms its support for the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, less than 60 days before the legislative elections in that country. The United States Secretary of State assured in Budapest that Hungary is facing financial difficulties and threatens stability. He stated that President Trump would be very interested in providing support due to his relationship with Orban. With Viktor Orban, the statements also come out as if saying it's thanks to him that the aid is coming, and so vote for him, almost but not quite. Basically, no. That's how it's been. That's how the Trumpist movements have acted, trying to influence certain elections, some more than others. Has he succeeded? This support is not just a diplomatic issue, but rather a political one. Hungary holds a strategic position for Central Europe, which is also key for energy issues, migration issues, and security matters. So, well, in this situation, this announcement is made by the Secretary of State himself. No, basically not. That's the issue and what draws attention. Well, let's move on to other matters, other important topics as well. Hey, first of all, thank you very much for that thumbs up, for that like. We appreciate your support. If you can help us by sharing on Twitter, well, not right now because it's down, but on your social networks, it's really appreciated. Thanks to those who already do it, and for the likes, everyone. The Senate, apparently, at least right now, has been very involved in what's happening in Trump's Treasury Department. Obviously, and it seems like there's a split there, both in Congress and starting to appear in Trump's own cabinet. So there could be changes in the cabinet. Because, I mean, if Trump keeps this up, then he'd have a cabinet that's not really in favor of the things Trump himself is doing. John Hawley, L. This person is apparently already preparing his departure after strong internal friction with Secretary Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, in the midst of tensions over the policy against Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. According to reports from John Hawley, he is the Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence at the United States Treasury. And there's a clash. They don't like that they're opening up so much with Venezuela. They don't like that they're opening up so much with Delcy Rodriguez. Hawley is leaving his position after strategic disagreements with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. The friction centers on how to apply economic sanctions, especially in sensitive cases linked to international actors and political figures. It's not only about Venezuela, there are other cases too. Thank you. The United States sanctions directly include, for example, central and energy financial flows affecting countries like Iran, Russia, but also Venezuela. The Secretary of the Treasury has been considering easing restrictions on the Venezuelan oil sector to increase production and attract foreign capital. But at the same time, you weaken the geopolitical strategy. I mean, they're focused on suddenly, yes, doing business with countries that have caused problems. At least the strategy that Washington has, right? The Department of the Treasury has become the central arm of the United States global strategy, where economic sanctions are increasingly replacing direct military confrontation. And that's where the differences between these people are emerging. Pay attention. Now let's move on to other important matters. Right now, Iran is getting involved in another issue with the United States. Iran is accusing the United States of attacking Cuba. Look at what they're getting into now. According to Tehran, they are condemning the oil blockade promoted by Washington and point out that the sanctions are worsening the energy crisis in Havana. The tension from the Iranian government is now spreading to the Caribbean. This statement comes after the tremendous tightening that the United States currently has on Cuba, which is obviously causing the crisis to spread. The idea supposedly is to go against the Canel regime and weaken the Canel regime. But at the same time, well, the consequences are direct and immediate. Well, they go towards the issue of electricity, towards the issue of how sustainable is a society that doesn't have electric power, that doesn't have fuel to move around in these times. Iran stressed that the economic embargo on Cuba has lasted nearly 7 decades, causing significant human and material impacts. The Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Vaghe himself reportedly said that Washington must be held accountable for continuous and systematic violations of international laws. 6 out of 16 thermoelectric units are currently out of operation due to lack of maintenance and operation. Let's say more fuel is being added to the fire of everything that's happening in the Caribbean. Well, this energy suffocation they're trying to impose on the Cuban government is what has bothered the Iranians. It's a curious thing. What issues are they getting involved in now? I mean, because they criticize a lot about others getting involved over there, but also, well, we've seen how Iran has gotten more and more involved in Latin America, in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, in Argentina, Paraguay. They've detected members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, Sabamos, who, have even been detected in the United States. I know that their expansionist movement has been going on practically since they started in the late 70s. The regime of the Ayatollahs, I don't know what they do. Has it always had that expansionist need? Meanwhile, in other matters, also international ones, my dear sister. The former Minister of Energy of Ukraine was arrested at the country's border. The National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine confirmed the arrest of former Minister Herman Julio Kengo as he was trying to leave the country. The former Minister of Energy and later, by the way, Minister of Justice in Ukraine is a key figure throughout the entire Russia-Ukraine conflict. According to the official statement, he was arrested while trying to cross the border, which is already being interpreted as yet another attempt. Mr. That one, Guzman. Over there, they have a company called Energatom. By the way, many thanks to the community that sent us an ODN by themselves and the The we had Cypher and all that is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for being part of this project and for that like as well. Thank you very much. Hey, in the midst of all this, Ukraine Pravda reports, a media outlet from over there reports that Yulushenko was taken directly off a train, meaning he was already on the train trying to escape, let's say. The investigation by Radio Free Europe also revealed that he was detained under Article 208 because it hadn't been stated why he was detained. It is now known that it was under a criminal procedure code, that is Article 208, which allows for arrest without an immediate court order. The non-anti-corruption prosecutors have mentioned that there are recordings where the suspect talked about distributing bribes. And he also mentioned someone nicknamed Professor, an alias that, well, right now they don't know who it is, but they believe it's a retired former minister, that former professor who was also called by the Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, the so-called SAPO, S-A-P-O, like SAPO. And also the same border authorities already had instructions to alert if he tried to leave the country. I mean, they already knew it could be an attempted escape. Yulushenko was Minister of Energy in 2021, and in 2025, he was Minister of Justice until November of last year. So, well, that's everything. That's it. It's an idea in which Ukraine is looking to impose more restrictions on corruption, to put more limits on corruption. Because if not, it won't be able to become a member of the European Union. I mean, it has to show that it investigates and goes deeper, that it respects rights. Everything that, well, is supposed to be done in the European Union. So if a certain standard isn't reached, it won't be able to join the European Union. So that's a complicated search, because the other day I saw the survey on the perception of corruption in Ukraine. Although it has decreased, the perception of corruption is still one of the highest in Europe. I mean, it's basically at a Latin American level. The perception is still very high that there continues to be strong corruption in all areas of government. Russia is worse, then comes Ukraine, and after that other countries. But if we talk about corruption, that whole area is really terrible. Let's move on to other matters, other important topics. There are more details about what's happening on this issue. What do they call it? This operation that's a military exercise that some people refer to as those moving along the river. The Revolutionary Guard is not called the ICG. Now there are more details. They're coming in right now, because when we started, there wasn't much information yet. Well, now there are more details about what's happening in these maneuvers. If it's confirmed that it's in the Strait of Hormuz, there will be a reaction. I mean, I definitely think there will be a reaction in this area. Because, as I told you, a fifth of the world's oil passes through there. Yeah, so let's get into the details. Just help me out by giving it a like. And I'll keep bringing you the information with great pleasure. And later on, I'll get to the comments, right? Also, what's going on with the Kreshe Atlas? Also, by the way, we still have that pending. And if there is a bit more information and what's happening with other topics. But let me first tell you about the data we already have from this part of the world, okay? What information is there about this? Well, let's go into detail. Look, here are some of the boats that the Revolutionary Guard is using. For these types of operations they have some ships. They have, let's say, a somewhat interesting fleet. Not very big, but it's important. Secretary of State Marco Rubio notes that although negotiations are underway, they're only making things more difficult. Iran assured that they are going to carry out a military exercise that is supposedly scheduled. They had said it would be without weapons, and now they're doing it with weapons. They had cancelled it, and now they're carrying out a blockade drill. Look, a simulated blockade of the Strait of Hormuz sea route is clearly a message. It's not a message telling them, we can block the Strait of Hormuz. What's the plan? In the event that a war with Iran breaks out, one of the plans is to block this strait, and that Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and maybe even Oman itself wouldn't be able to pass through this area. Yes, or cut off 20% of the world's oil overnight. How about that? Placing soldiers here means they won't attack the United States. Other countries might attack whoever is stationed, but they won't deploy their own troops. It's not necessary because what they would do is fill the area with underwater mines. Yes, they're like the ones you've seen in movies probably. They're like spheres that float at certain distances and explode when touched. So any oil tanker would be unable to pass through there. So they fill all of that with mines in a few hours or days, and suddenly no one can get through there anymore. And for the area to be safe again, it can take months or years. I mean, it can cause a very serious problem. In terms of the world economy, it would have a tremendous effect. Well, they assure. Changing the subject, moving on to other matters. Thank you very much. We're almost 300 now. Hopefully we'll reach at least 300. That would be great. Thank you for being here with us. Look at the 3 seatless. Has it been strange? No, not just the phenomenon itself, but the way the information has been handled is what's surprising. For example, the images that China sent were degraded. I think they had about 3,500% less information. I mean, they were degrading the information they sent for some strange reason. If you intend to share information, why take it away? But has National Aeronautics and Space Administration done the same thing? A lot of their information never came out, or they said some system failed. I don't know what failed. The point is that even today, there's still a lack of basic information. We're not talking about advanced information here. It's not too complicated. No, just basic information that for some reason they just didn't want to give, or they diluted it, or they've given it out drop by drop. In fact, now it's being noticed that some of the information is being rewritten. I mean, they're changing it, and that also draws attention. Silently, they've been changing the official catalog of interstellar objects, and that's also been generating more controversy. All of this, the case of 13 Atlas is part of it. There have been reports of modifications in the official records managed by National Aeronautics and Space Administration through the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Because look, if you're going to do it right and you say, look, we made mistakes in all this data, we've already confirmed it, these are the correct ones, perfect. Normally you would let people know, you would say, hey, there's an update, we have to change all this. But instead, almost on tiptoe, they go and change the information without telling anyone. It's not the first time they've done this. They've already been modifying several of the posts. Well, Avalo himself even said it at the time. Hey, do you think we won't notice? They had this information one way, here it is, now they put it this way, what's going on? Nothing. An intelligence source, Open Source Intelligence, reportedly said that recent changes were detected in the Center for Near-Earth Object Studies catalog related to near-Earth objects and possible interstellar objects. According to the report, the mathematical sign of a velocity component in the record of the meteorite catalogued in 2025 has also been changed. Also, it's not known why it was changed. A simple change of sign can completely alter how the calculated trajectory of the object is understood, determining, for example, whether it comes from the solar system or from interstellar space. So why change it for this object? A sign that basically changes the entire origin of that object, of another meteorite? Also from 2025, besides the 13 Atlas before the adjustment, the objects seem to have characteristics that could be of interstellar origin. Now, they're simply discarded because there was a sign change that National Aeronautics and Space Administration made without confirming why they did it. Center for Near-Earth Object Studies is the official database where the trajectories, velocities, and possible risks of near-Earth objects are recorded. Loeb himself has said and assured that he has detected inconsistencies between archived versions of catalogs and the current ones. Loeb's own team compared the previous versions, using tools like the Wayback Machine, which can show you if any public record was modified compared to the current one. You suddenly say, wait, this news was published like this, I remember it this way. So you check the Wayback Machine. Sometimes they don't have all the information from the internet because they can't handle so much, but especially the really big media outlets do. Look, you published this and now you changed it and you didn't put it because there are a lot of media outlets that do update it, and it says there. This article was published on April 15, 2025, but it was updated on January 13, 2028. I don't know when it will be updated again, if it even gets updated. So it says, oh, well, here it is, it was updated. But when they do it without letting anyone know, it's tough because they want to change this. It kind of sounds more deceptive there, so that's very delicate. That's why it's on Back Machine and other pages that let you see how things were in the past, and you say, oh look, this was like this, like this, like this, so you get an idea. It's very interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. E3 and Atlas is an object that's inside the Atlas program. There's been a lot of speculation about the details, for example, about the speed of information. Here we have weeks, they wait months. I think I'm not referring to the speed of the phenomenon itself, but to the speed of the jets of these. Let's say, what's it called? Well, yes, jets as a type of jets. These are like propulsions or chemical reactions that the supposed comet has. So they said the speed of each of these tails, let's say, or anti-tails. And all of this can tell us if the object is artificial or not. Why? Because in nature they can only react and reach a certain limited speed. They can't go beyond that. Do you know what the limit is in space with the element, like methane or whatever? The element you want? It's just this. If it's 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 times faster, you say this is something that's being manipulated by some kind of technology. So it's information, well, everyone is waiting for it. Among a lot, the list of quite a bit of information that just hasn't been given. Not so far. Well, even though there has been manipulation of information, it's not clear what for. I mean, it's not clear what the idea is behind modifying certain technical data. Because normally it's done in a very serious way, and usually it's done by explaining why a change is being made. Right now, well, it's not clear. There's a controversy about transparency, there's a controversy about the methodology that's being used. And this makes us think that there's something about the phenomenon that they want to hide. What is it? I don't know, I couldn't say. Does that mean it has to be something artificial, or by force of me constantly that it is a financial organization where the headquarters are right? Let's see, confusion among professionals, as it should be something of that level, and well, there it is. That's the matter. Thank you. Hey, do you remember this actor, Robert Duvall? No, this great actor, really great actor. Do you remember that scene in Apocalypse Now, where he talks about Francis Ford Coppola? No, the one with that scene where the bombs are going off and all that between the Vietnamese and the Americans, right? In the movie and everyone, because besides they often used real weapons. So all of that, the soldiers, the actors reacting, and him just like that, not reacting, right? He says something like, I love the smell of napalm in the morning, right? That line isn't from this great actor, but I think that's the most epic moment of his career. I don't think so. I don't know if you guys think it's someone else, but Robert Duvall, well, also the Godfather, right? Also the Godfather, of course. This character might not be as epic as the one in Apocalypse Now, and also with the same director, by the way, with Francis Ford Coppola, who passed away at 95 years old. Just look at that, a classic from that Hollywood that made epic movies and dared to do different things, because it was an era, you know? It was an extraordinary era. Those who know the story of how The Godfather was made, there's even a series about how the movie was made. There are documentaries. I mean, maybe for us it's normal now. But at that time, movies were very much like television. Movies were overlit. It was horrible, right? I didn't like that. I mean, full of light, full of colors, and that's how all the movies were. Hey, well, it's a suspense movie, just flood it with light, flood it with everything, and then The Godfather comes along and does it right. When the producers saw how the movie turned out, they were shocked, and even more so the distributors, because how are we going to promote a movie that's almost completely dark? That's what they said, because they were used to everything being overly lit, right? And history proved that they loved it. It felt alive, it felt real, it felt different. I mean, yeah, and well, Apocalypse Now, super epic the way it was made, but I don't really know much about that. A lot of very controversial things. 4 years making the movie on the island, 2 or 3 heart attacks for Francis Ford Coppola from the stress, and all the stuff they were taking because they were into some really strange things. I mean, yeah, it was a huge deal. Well, this. What's the name of the actor who played Morpheus? The actor who played Morpheus. Man, I forgot his name. Let me see if I can remember. Well, this actor, the one with the red pill and the blue pill, he's in that movie, Apocalypse Now. I don't know if you remember. He plays a small role. He's one of the soldiers. He was 14 years old and lied to the production, saying he was 18 and they hired him. But was he really? Well, he was a minor. He was supposed to be there with his parents and all that, but that wasn't the case. No, well, there, he surely had to witness some pretty intense things. He was a giant. I mean, he was already huge. He was 14 years old, but if you said he was 18, you could easily believe he was in his 20s. He was big. He was really solid, so he didn't look his age. There are a lot of myths, some of which have been confirmed as real and others that aren't real, and over time it's also been confirmed that they're not. But the movie is really good, very interesting if you can watch it, the original version, I mean the one that came out in theaters, and then watch the extended version. Director's cut with a lot of changes, very interesting, with completely different scenes from the ones in the movie. I was lucky enough to be able to watch that one in the theater a few years ago when they showed it, and honestly, it's a spectacle, a really interesting spectacle. Well, Robert Duvall passed away at the age of 95. He's one of those classic actors who might not be extremely well known these days, but for those who watched The Godfather or who saw a bit of MASH, I haven't seen it myself, so I can't comment on it. He also appears in To Kill a Mockingbird. He passed away, it says. Bob died peacefully at home, surrounded by love and comfort. Look, just comfortably, like me. I think everyone someday, when they think about how they'd like to pass away, well, with your family, and calm and at the oldest age possible. Well, that's how Robert Duvall himself did it, Bob. He says he passed away peacefully at home together. By the way, his wife Luciana Duvall wrote this in a message on Facebook. Well, this Oscar winner, who also became a narrator, a director, I mean, he did a lot. Above all, he enjoyed his career, and I hope he also enjoyed life. I think so. I can't imagine otherwise. Well, he passed away. And another thing, let's move on to other serious matters as well. I hadn't seen him in a while. If you'd asked, is Robert Duvall still alive? I wouldn't have known. I'd just say I don't know. That's because there aren't many actors. I was talking about it yesterday. I don't know why. About Charlie Chaplin. About this other one. Well, about like many very famous actors from the silent film era and later. Well, a lot of them are still around. They're still alive, and you wouldn't even imagine it. But this actor was a classic from 30 movie, and is he really still alive? Well, yes. And what has he done all these decades? Well, no, nothing really. Many didn't adapt to sound, or didn't adapt to the new style of cinema, or many simply just weren't hired anymore, right? It's difficult sometimes because there's a lot of competition and cinema is changing and changing and constantly changing. Let's move on to other matters. How have you been, Adriana? Greetings, Karim. How have you been? Or Juan, how have you been? Fishburne? Fishburne? No, that's not him. That's not him. He says this. That's not him. It's not this Fishburne. Let me check first, just to be sure. Isn't it this one? What's his name? Maybe I'm confusing him with the actor? Fishburne is the one in The Matrix? No, yes, of course. Here is Mira Fishburne, 1979 Apocalypse Now. Here is Lawrence Fishburne. I'll show you the picture. Him, he was in it. Here he is. There he is. Hella, this man is him. He was 14 years old. He was really tall. Yes, that's what they say. Fishburne lied about his age in Apocalypse Now, it says, and he had a horrible experience. Coppola was disappointed. Besides, this guy doesn't say anything. Well, there he is, right? Yes, that's Lawrence Fishburne. Exactly. Yes, that's the one, man. I really like this actor, and he has an epic role in he had his presence. Does it give you the detail? There are actors and actresses who have something beyond just being an actor, not just as a creator. They perform, not just a character. And there are some who, I don't know if they're really like that or not, but they give you the feeling that they're very intelligent, right? And there are others who aren't. Isn't that right? I mean, for example, Tom Hanks, I can see him as intelligent, or I can see him as, well, someone not so intelligent. Let's say it depends on the character. And you can do that, but there are characters, there are actresses where you say, no, I can only see her as someone very intelligent. He's one of them. This guy, this film guy, no, they just throw him out. I couldn't remember his name, honestly, but let's move on. Let's move on to other matters before anything else. Juan Conejo, thank you, greetings. Yeah, okay, it was a rhetorical question. Okay, it was more like, isn't this film guy like that? Was he like that? The question, no, I thought it was straightforward. It's not me. Okay, let's move on. I'll send you to others. Let's go. Well, thank you. And that's what's happening. How are things changing in certain areas controlled by the United States? When you suddenly want to act really tough, when you start creating distrust toward the world, well, suddenly people also start to distrust you. Isn't that logical? The major banks in the United Kingdom are preparing an additional payment system out of fear that the United States could block financial networks in a geopolitical crisis. Or what if suddenly the United States says, you know what, I'm canceling everything that's Visa, you have the power of the United States, everything that's MasterCard? Well, let's say goodbye and you're left without a payment system. What do you do then? Well, the United Kingdom, the top ultra plus geopolitical partner of the United States. because it's the origin of the United States. I mean, the United States as it is today, let's say, well, it's the king. They're the ones from the United Kingdom. Not going there from one place, I obviously knew about others, especially from here in Latin America, a lot. But the ones who started that were their own independents and them. And they've had a relationship in practically almost every conflict of the last century and a bit. Well, at least the last century, right? More or less, they've had a lot of interaction, and now to distrust each other at that level where you say, wow, what if you stab me in the back? And suddenly, well, the United Kingdom's financial sector is moving, and it's been doing this quietly. But at some point, the financial experts noticed, and they said, hey, what's going on? Are they making new systems? There's distrust, because if there wasn't any, you wouldn't need it. You'd say, well, I fully trust this system like you've done for decades. And suddenly, if you're changing it, the only thing that implies is that there's a lack of trust. Which, in a way, is understandable, right? There can't be just one system. There have to be different financial systems for all of this to work. The initiative seeks to reduce dependence on United States payment networks that dominate the market. The first key meeting will be chaired by Van Murray, Chief Executive Officer of Barclays United Kingdom. Barclays will lead the initial talks to structure the project. It will be a new company funded by London's CIDI but backed by the British government. Donald Trump has raised geopolitical tensions, especially after statements about NATO issues. Visa and MasterCard practically dominate the entire British market. An executive quoted warns that the country would go back to the 1950s when cash dominated the economy. If this happens, the European Parliament has called for the creation of a European payments Airbus to guarantee financial sovereignty. So the European Parliament as well, I mean, because, well, the United Kingdom is not part of Europe, so because of Brexit, it's not considered part of the European Union. So they could create a new payment system. Europe could create another one. Brexit. On the other hand, here with another system, no, it's still in progress and they're starting to diversify them, right? China is working on this internal digital currency plan, which later it seems like maybe not, or maybe yes. Well, who knows what they're going to do? No, I really don't know. I'll check on that later. In the end, but that they had the intention, they did. I don't know how it turned out now. I don't know if it got lost there. And you also like finance topics. Let's see if you have the info. Well, that's how it is, right? It's pretty interesting, isn't it? It's an important move, right? It changes the world's economy because then the world is also going to ask the same thing we ask today. And what if it's true? What if suddenly there's trouble? Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Let's move on to other important matters as well. Notice that in Singapore, a new tax is being imposed on flights. The Asian country is going to charge $32 per ticket to finance the issue of fuel and make it more sustainable in every sense. From a sustainable point of view, also energy-wise, well, for safety, Singapore is applying this new charge, which is focused more on the ecological aspect, according to reports. Starting from October 1st of this year, 2026, all flights departing from Changi International Airport, the busiest in all of Southeast Asia. Well, it's going to have this extra charge, right? The tax for economy flights is going to be smaller. The tax, for example, for an economy flight is about $1, something like that. And then for flights that are a bit more, for example, international flights and regular flights, they're going to be around 41 Singapore dollars, which is about 31 or 32 United States dollars. No, the money collected will go directly to the use of sustainable fuel in aviation. An alternative that is cleaner, but, well, it's also a bit more expensive. So, well, that's part of the interesting observable movements today. By the way, let's move on to other matters, other interesting topics. No. Notice how it collapses. Let's see if we can observe it. This is a kind of poetry from the lover's place. Over there in Italy, it's not common for tourism and also a bit for couples. And that's how it is, right? So, well, this place before Valentine's Day, right? The day of love, friendship, and all that, well, it would have collapsed. So look, that's how it was. That's how it stayed. That's it. That's all. This is it. If you ever consider visiting it, it won't be the same. It will be possible, but only to see what's left. What happened? I remember something similar that was here in Mexico. Do you remember a similar arch? Not just any arch, an arch with this rock formation called the Arch of Love, like that, right? More obviously, Lava's Arch, well, it had collapsed during a storm, the Oriana storm, which hit the tourist heart of Puglia. In Italy, the famous natural arch, known as the Arch of Love, collapsed on February 14th. Oh, sorry for laughing. It's just that it made me laugh. I don't know. It just seems like this to me. That nature suddenly matches the dates so well. Sometimes, well, it can be funny, right? Because it's funny and worrying. Sometimes. Like what happened on September 19th here in Mexico when the earthquake happened again, which is something possible, right? That the earthquake happens again on the same day. Well, we already know about that, but the point is that on February 14th, there were no people who died. No, there wasn't any problem in that sense, but nature did send a message, didn't it? The arch was a spot that was emblematic for marriage proposals and wedding photo sessions, becoming a romantic symbol in the Adriatic, according to reports. Well, that's a curious topic, isn't it? One of today's curiosities. Visitors and residents noticed the disappearance of the arch on Sunday morning, finding large blocks of fallen rocks in its place. The regional president stated that the area has lost one of its most important symbolic attractions. Experts point out that extreme weather events are accelerating natural erosion processes that used to take decades. The Salento area, where the arch was located, is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Italy, especially in the summer. The collapse then is a huge issue, especially for the locals who obviously lose a tourist attraction for that area. Well, let's move on to the comments. How have you all been? How's everything going? Thank you so much for joining us. A big shout out to Joaquin Ejo, to Beto Barba. Yes, Beto Barba, right? Beto Barba, how have you been? Greetings, what's up? Hey, is Harry Zuford still causing trouble? Still, right? Very active. You know, I thought he wasn't that physically active. I mean, but actually, just a little while ago, well, about a year ago, right? I remember he was here in Baja California doing a 70 or 80 kilometer bike ride, something like that, which isn't bad at all. He was with a group of cyclists and honestly, he looked pretty strong, right? I mean, yeah, some of these actors have really managed to take good care of themselves, right? They've been very smart about how they live their lives. No, because some of them are really worn out. They're not even 60 yet, and you can tell. And some who do make it to 60, not like Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, and a few others out there who reach that age with a pretty strong physique. Well, the one who played Hannibal Lecter, he's already in his 80s easily. His lucidity and physique are impressive, right? I mean, he has a very upright posture, very slim. I mean, Anthony Hopkins is really surprising. Anthony Hopkins, I don't know if you've seen him. I follow him on social media, you know, but lately he hasn't been showing up for me. A lot of people, you follow someone and suddenly they stop showing up and then you forget about them. I don't know what they're up to, but I understand he's still active, right? He hasn't retired. Anthony Hopkins, right? Let me see if I have him around here. Look. More or less, let's see what they're up to. They're doing things like painting. I mean, they're doing a lot of things. You know, they stay very active. Look, I don't know. Maybe I would just need to check their social media to see their latest photo. But they're doing very well. They're doing very well. How have you been? Says Adriana. How have you been? Greetings, Sol Garcia. How are you? How have you been? She says. They filled him with lies until he broke, she says. That love was very heavy, says Sol. How have you been, Sol? Greetings, Pepe. I think there's something strange between the weather, human behavior, and natural disasters. Alguay, she says. Adriana, how have you been? Adriana, a big greeting, says Gisela. How have you been? Greetings. Thank you to everyone who supports this channel through membership, super chat, or a like. Any support is greatly appreciated. All right, Elena, how have you been? Greetings to Puebla. How are things going over there? Greetings to your family. Who else is here? Greetings to Karim as well, right? Who else? Blanca Barcelo, Jose Sarate, my namesake. How have you been? Good morning to the whole community watching us. Greetings to those driving, to those watching us while working as well. Thank you very much. I know not everyone can comment. Some are busy with activities that make it impossible. So just sending a greeting, right? If you have time, later on, just send us a hello, right? At least a greeting. Rochi, how have you been? Good afternoon, Rochi. Thank you very much. And if you have the time and chance, you can give us that thumbs up. We really appreciate all the support you give. It really helps the channel get shared a bit more, right? 13, Atlas, the sun, the moon, even the earth itself, climates, whatever it is, everything. There are all kinds of curious behaviors, everything. Well, we'll see each other again later. We'll keep talking about what's happening on the planet and anything else. Send us a message if you see anything strange or curious. We're here paying attention. There's our email, there's our account at Pepe in Vivo, right? You can find us on almost all social networks, right? A hug, Omar, how have you been? Greetings, Omar, says Pepe. We're at work listening to the news, like always. That's great, Omar. Thank you very much. I imagine you're driving right now. You're in the car like that. Over there in New York, greetings all the way to New York. That's great. Well, we'll see you later. Thank you very much for joining us around noon, I think, or maybe later, right? And at night, we're also here live. Well, a hug. See you later. Goodbye. We interrupt your regular programming. Thank you for tuning in. Honestly, this is Pepe Live.
The truth is intense, pure. The unusual is real, pure. Here we analyze it. Global perspective. Don't miss out. Tune into the Pepe Live channel, controlling the signal. Pepe and Astrid telling it like it is. Raw journalism. Here it's respected. Turn on the alert. Don't lose track until next time. Yes, sir.
We're taking roll.
Subscribe. Pepe live in the house.
Subscribe.